In marketing, everything must work seamlessly, or efficiency, speed, and ROI all suffer. That's why Quad is obsessed with making sure your marketing machine runs smoothly with less friction and smarter integration. Better marketing is built on Quad. See how better gets done at quad.com/buildbetter. Hey gang, it's Monday, July 28th. Jeremy, Heidi, and listeners, welcome to Behind the Numbers, an e-marketing video podcast made possible by Quad. I'm Marcus, and today I'm joined by two people. Let's meet them. We start with our Senior Director of Briefings. He lives in New York. We call him Jeremy Goldman.
Hello, Marcus, and happy National Milk Chocolate Day.
I should have known this was coming. Heidi, every time Jeremy's on, he surprises us with these non-holidays.
It's real. Google it.
How are you spending your free time? Chocolate, what's it called? Chocolate Milk Day?
Milk Chocolate Day.
Oh, okay. I'll take that. That's way better. But what kind, though, are we talking? Only Cadbury's is the right answer. Vice President of Brand Marketing at Quad is joining us too, living in New York as well. It's Heidi Waldusky. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Do you agree, Cadbury's? But not American Cadbury's.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Cadbury's is superior. Am I allowed to say that? But I feel like we can't forget like a Hershey's.
English Cadbury's.
You know what I mean?
Oh, Heidi.
I'm sorry, but it's there.
English Cadbury's is really great. Those eclairs are to die for.
Well played, Jeremy. Heidi, that's okay. We'll try to pick it up from here. To get to know Heidi a bit better, we have our speed intro first, of course. This is where we get to know our guest, our external guest, a little better, and our internal guest a little better as well. Two questions. First one's just for Heidi. Heidi, what do you do in a sentence?
Ooh, that's a good one. I help people fall in love with Quad. That's what I do.
That is good. I want to do that. I have to host the podcast. All right.
It'll happen. It'll come.
It's probably better that I don't help people fall in love with Quad because I don't know what Quad does as well as you do. So do you want to explain to folks what Quad does?
You help people fall in love with your podcast. It's the same.
I tried.
It's the same thing. Behind the numbers. Quad solves really big, gnarly problems for marketers and makes their lives easier.
Very nice. Second question for both of you. We'll start with Heidi. This is the real question. What are your top 3 favorite Disney films of all time? I asked this and then realized Disney can mean anything. I kind of meant cartoon.
Okay, good. Because I was like, I don't even know if I'm really that familiar with the whole Disney catalog. Because there's Pixar in there, there's DreamWorks.
Could have gone anywhere.
I don't know.
Yeah, Avengers,
top 3.
Star Wars.
Okay, top 3 animated films. I think for me, like I don't have kids, and my nephews were more like Lego kids, right? But if I think about animated films for me, it's sort of what I loved and grew up with. So like I loved Aladdin when it came out. I thought that was like so revolutionary with Robin Williams. I was like, oh my God. Love Kung Fu Panda. I love that movie. I've watched it 78 million times. I don't think that was Disney.
58 million.
But Kung Fu Panda is.
That's okay.
I thought that was DreamWorks. Okay.
I think, but we can't just say Disney because I don't know.
Okay, that's
also,
fair.
Disney
counts.
owns everything now, so we don't know. And then I really loved The Incredibles. I thought like all 3 of those sort of represent a shift in what an animated movie means, and I thought The Incredibles was really just brilliant. Amazing and brilliant. Yeah.
I watched the first one with my sister, and then I accidentally watched the second one without her. She didn't talk to me for a year. That's half of a true story. Jeremy, what do you have for us?
Snow White. I agree with The Incredibles, but I think the best one was the animated, not the recent one, Lilo and Stitch. Oh, it's really good.
It's a good one. Okay.
It's lovely.
I've got completely different ones. I went Toy Story.
Oh, nice.
Robin Hood.
Nice.
Tell me you've seen Robin.
I don't think I've
little
seen
fox.
That one.
It's so good. And The Sword and the Stone.
That's actually a pretty good one. I feel like
it's a solid list.
Deep
classic.
Cut. No pun intended.
That is a deep cut.
Anyway, today's real topic. The missing link in omnichannel. Authentic brand storytelling. So we're talking about authentic brand storytelling. So we'll start with a question about that. Makes sense? Yes. Heidi, what does authentic storytelling look like in practice? And I picked Disney, which was it a lifetime of stories is their slogan. Didn't even mean to do that. Well played, Marcus. But yes, authentic storytelling, not the Disney version. What do you think that looks like in practice?
I think that's a really important qualifier at the end of your question, in practice, right? I think we all know what authentic storytelling should look like when it comes to brands, like what's really true for your brand. But I think in practice, it's about how are you behaving? I think storytelling isn't so literal. I think sometimes people think like, what's my campaign, or it's my mission video, or it's my manifesto, or it's, literally the words that I write, but it's also how are you behaving as a brand? Because like that's what consumers are picking up on the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I liked as well that we'd spoken before this episode, and one of the things that was mentioned was that you should tell the same story no matter where it shows up. And I think a lot of people forget that. Talk to us a bit about how important that piece is.
That's an incredibly important piece. I think consumers have incredible like BS detectors, right? So if you're not being consistent with your story in multiple places, then they're not going to believe you. Like that's inauthentic, right? When you think about people, like what makes someone authentic, it's because they're true to who they are in most situations that you see them in. The same thing is with brands. Like if you're showing up and you're telling me one thing and you're behaving another way, even if it's just a few times, like it starts to erode that trust. People don't sort of believe in what you're doing, and brands, it happens all of the time where consumers will start to like call you out. They love it. It's actually one of their favorite hobbies is to call out brands. So I think that consistency is incredibly important, and it's really important for brands to make sure they're asking themselves, what does this look like and feel like every time I'm interacting with my consumer, no matter how small the interaction is?
And there's data, because eMarketer, we love data,
really
that supports this, that shows obviously if you keep on investing in the exact same attributes, then consumers get attracted to you, like it doesn't, it's just something that naturally, if you think about it, like you go on a first date, right? And, which I do not do for the last 19 years. So basically you say, I know who I am, and you like puff out your chest and you're very confident, and, that's charismatic. That's the kind of thing that you need to do as a brand if you want to attract attention.
I guess it also feels like if you're telling a different story in multiple places, it might as well just be different companies, completely different stories, because the consumers aren't going to make the connection by themselves.
And that's not to say you can't customize the story based on the channel that you're appearing in, right? You also don't want to be like boring, you want to be curious and imaginative and, all of these things. So like you want to be able to tailor that story. Otherwise, like that's inauthentic as well. You're like, oh my God, they just keep saying the same thing over and over again. So like you want to make sure you're bringing different layers to your storytelling. But that's really important, is just the consistency. And I think we're seeing today brands who have perhaps taken a little bit of misstep, and you see what happens when they do that.
Yeah. Heidi, Quad takes the position that storytelling, I think I agreed, storytelling done right, turns customers into a community, and brands need to design experiences that make people part of the story. Any best-in-class examples jump out to you? What does bringing customers in and making them part of the story look like?
I think that means a couple of different things. I think there are brands who do that literally, brands who make actual customers and testimonials and all of those different things like part of their brand. I think there's a lot of like, Chick-fil-A sort of comes to mind. It's like the center of their, campaigns where they're bringing people in and they're telling real stories. I think
it's a good one.
YNAB is a brand that I personally love. It's sort of like a smaller budgeting tool, and like customers are at the center of everything that they do. Like that whole brand is built around responding to customer queries. They have a great Facebook page, so like the customers really feed the brand. But I think it's also things like, Dick's Sporting Goods with their new House of Sport retail experiences, right? Like they believe, oh, hey, in order to buy sports equipment, you probably want to try it out and play with it first, right?
Novel idea. Yeah.
They've taken that responsibility on as a retailer and as a brand to say, you know what, we're just going to make this happen. And I think we all remember Dick's back in the Alden days. Like that's not what that brand was. So I think today they're really taking that step to do that. And I think Delta is also a great example. Like I'm a Delta stan, we're in New York, and I think there's a reason why they just spent like $1 cajillion essentially rebuilding LaGuardia, because it is an important embrace of bringing those customers in. It's that behavior of like we're creating a really deep value exchange here. Thank you for being a customer. In return, here's all the things we're going to give you. And so you feel like you are part of that brand story, even if it's not like literal testimonial.
It feels like a direct investment in the customer, especially that Delta one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Those are, by the way, those are great examples. And I think that to me, like what I take from that is that there's so many different ways that you can do this. It's not like you must do it in this exact way if you want to bring your customers in. There are plenty of brands also that, essentially from a social listening standpoint and from a customer care standpoint, where they're constantly getting ideas and building those into the brand and making people feel like that was my idea. Like Delta listened to me.
Yes.
And then you have a sense of investment on a personal level with that brand's success.
Exactly. I've been thinking a lot about Nike lately. So, Nike ran its first Super Bowl commercial in 25 plus years earlier this year. And I thought what was really interesting is the CMO sort of came out and was talking to a lot of the trade pups about part of the reason that they did that. It was because they had gotten away from their brand storytelling, and it was showing in the stock price. It was showing in business performance. They sort of over-indexed on performance marketing. And she gave this great quote. I think it was to Fast Company, which is like, I want people to remember that we're in support of athletes, not just algorithms, which I thought was really key of like, because I guarantee you, they were probably like, we're Nike. We've spent decades building this brand. Like, well, what's the deal? Like, we can go a whole hog on digital marketing and performance marketing. But when you don't take the time to keep your foot on the gas a little bit, people became disconnected from the Nike story. Sales start to suffer. And so now they're getting back to their brand origins, which is a really interesting
Marcus,
lesson.
I actually think that, curious what you think, but I mean, I think that this is a very important message to happen at a time where, we're talking during earnings season and a lot of the results of tariffs and uncertainty are kind of coming in. And I think there are a lot of people and agencies and brands I've spoken to who are maybe over indexing too much in performance and cutting some other things that are going to come back to bite them in the long term, so this is an important message, especially like at a point in time like this.
Yeah. You can't assume, that people are just going to stick around because they have before. You got to keep watering the plants. And I think about that with people who listen to the show. Just because you have a few people who start to listen to the show doesn't mean you might not have some people who stop listening to the show. And so it's always a net, how many customers did you keep and did you add? How many people did you still listening and new listeners did you get? And I think that sometimes people forget that you have to make sure that people are reminded, especially today, reminded of what you stand for and your brand messaging.
We need an omni-channel campaign for the podcast, Marcus. If Stuart, who leads the team, is listening, I mean, I really think like print, out of home, the whole shebang, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure it works.
I think it does too.
Yeah, as long as it's not my face on a billboard. Although our marketing budget, I've been told that our next event, which I will be at in September, the Future of Digital, 2026 and beyond, I will be there. And I was told that I have to wear a sandwich board. I kind of want to wear one, but I will be there walking around with a sandwich board. So if you see me, come say hi. We're talking about authenticity, and that word was a word that is kind of made an appearance multiple times in your new research that you've done with the Harris Poll. And it was brought up on a number of fronts, but one of them was looking at the level of authenticity between print versus digital. Heidi, what did you guys find?
So the research was really intended to get a pulse on like where consumers are at today in terms of their omni-channel experience, right? We didn't ask them that literal question, like, what do you think about omni-channel experience, right? Like, that's no fun. But in terms of like how they want to connect with brands and what they feel is authentic, how they feel about digital specifically, and sort of what we're finding is, I think digital, it's a very 2D experience. I think consumers know that it's a necessary part of their lives. Like, I think we all agree it is sort of a functional mandate. It has changed the way we live and communicate. But I think what we're finding is it's also kind of, there's something missing when it comes to digital in terms of like this craving for in real life experiences. When we started asking specifically about different types of media, consumers started coming back and telling us, I think our one of the great stats in there is, 71% of the people surveyed feel that print is more authentic in terms of being able to connect with a brand than digital is. We're not necessarily saying like, do you hate digital? Like that wasn't really the point, but it was about, how are you connecting with brands? What sparks that interest? And I think some really interesting words popped in that, just besides that print helps me feel more authentically connected to a brand. There were a lot of words like the online shopping experience is missing some of the magic that an in-store shopping experience is missing. They talked about wanting to be surprised a little bit more by brands via mail and things like that. And I thought that those were two really interesting words, like magic and surprise. And it goes back to that desire to be delighted.
There was one piece of data, Marcus, by the way, that I saw from your research that I really liked and I thought was very interesting. Interest in print media and tactile experiences in general. So for print magazines, for instance, adults, 48% to have an interest. But for Gen Z and millennials, it's 63%. And you kind of see this in a lot of the data where like younger consumers who are going to consume for longer because they will live longer, they care more about print, in part, I think, because of digital saturation, right? There's just so much digital. You're like, an out of home, billboard or a print ad. Like, it's just like a nice, refreshing change of pace, based off of the way that we live these days.
Agreed. And I think what was interesting about that when we saw the younger generation starting to come through, because I think maybe part of our concern was like, is this just going to be a bunch of boomer nostalgia, right? Like, be like, I love my catalogs. But I think when we saw those younger generations really coming through, what it says to us is like, this isn't about nostalgia, because like these younger generations simply don't have the experiences to want to go back to the way something was. But what they're telling us is like, I have a real psychological need as a human being for tactile experiences. And wow, this is really additive to my experience when I'm out in a retail environment or when things are happening. I mean, just look at the Amazon toy catalog. People love that thing. Love that thing. People get mad that they don't get it. I don't get it. I get mad. But like, I think it just goes to show it's all part of it. And that's what consumers are clamoring for. They're asking for brands to give it to them.
Yeah, we thought just because it was an old medium that people wouldn't want it. We kind of consigned print to the dustbin of history, maybe a bit prematurely, just because something new and shiny came along. But it still works. And I was reading a piece by Heather Rose Artushin in Psychology Today, and she was talking more about books, but she was talking about books in the sense of print versus digital ebooks. And she was saying there's some research, comprehension is 6 to 8 times better with physical books than e-readers. And then she went on to explain kind of why that might be. She was saying that print is experienced in the body. She was saying, obviously, you're turning the pages, which is something that people reference a lot with books and wanting to read print books versus ebooks. But she was saying you're also carrying the book, you're highlighting your favorite passages, you're positioning your body in a certain way when you're reading. And also research is saying when you're turning the pages, we create an index in the brain that maps what we read visually to a particular page. So you're helping with information retention.
We were talking a little bit about this before we started recording. By the way, Marcus, I hope you were reading the actual print magazine and not the website. So
maybe,
not to embarrass you. But the other key thing about this, is that, I have clients that, tell me all the time that they actually print out the PDFs of articles and reports and then highlight them, because it is better for their retention. And this is like a known human phenomenon. So it makes perfect sense.
It's sort of my new fascination. I go on YouTube and I watch videos of people writing in notebooks. It sounds more fun than I actually like, or it is more fun than it sounds. But there are people who are online, like on YouTube, teaching you how to really use analog note taking to your benefit, to retain more information, to learn better, to stay more organized. It's been super fascinating.
Yeah. There's also a social component to it, which she was talking about in the piece, saying that you're perusing the shelves in a bookstore. You're asking your local librarian for recommendations. You're passing along a copy of your favorite book to a friend. And she was saying digital bypasses opportunities for connection.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, there's a curiosity to it, I think, that is really important. I think if you think of the way we used to digest marketing, it's like I'm watching TV because I'm being entertained, and oh my God, a commercial comes on, and isn't that delightful? But my phone, that screen, is serving many different purposes. Like, it's not just entertainment, it's also utility. It's real function. Like, everything is on that thing. Can my brain really separate between the types of experiences I'm having in order to receive the right message? So, and I think that's what physical offers.
Yeah.
And the smell of books.
Oh, it's the best part. Speaking about the physical, you had a line said packaging isn't just packaging, it's a brand's handshake. Packaging, obviously, a very physical component of a company. Expand on this, if you would, Heidi.
Packaging is really, again, that tactile form of experiencing a brand. Like, it really is that representation of what a brand is. Very rarely are you making human contact with a brand. Like, I don't really, there's not a lot of ways that that's happening. But when I'm experiencing the packaging, it's telling me a story. Going back to that storytelling thing, it's telling me a story about your brand. It's telling me how you want me to experience your brand. And it is quite literally that handshake, because you're holding it, and it's a very important representation of who you are,
and often a first impression, right?
Because it's
you might be getting a product for the first time, and that whole unboxing experience, there's a reason why that those things have gone viral, even though they're digital videos and not print, but like, they're talking about something that's tactile and physical. And I think that should tell a lot of us, like, how important it is, like, to actually touch things. And going back to the dating analogy, you're going to show up for a first date, you want to be like in a nice outfit, right? You're not going to show up like a schlump, basically, New Yorker word. You want to look like very presentable, because if not, then you're setting the wrong tone for the whole entire experience.
Yeah, it's like a cold, clammy handshake instead of a nice warm one.
Yeah. You want to bring that experience to life. And that's why this podcast got started, actually, was because we wanted to humanize the brand. We're a research company, so people interacted us with a website, maybe a salesperson, and we wanted to be like, there are a bunch of folks back here with brilliant minds and personalities and senses of humor, and we'd love for you to meet them, and that to be your gateway, your doorway into the home of eMarketer, so to speak. So yeah, any way you can bring that to life, whether it's with packaging or really anything, as that first impression, it really matters. Well, Heidi, to close out the episode, I want to circle back to the title of the episode, which we were discussing, which was the missing link in omnichannel. Tell us what that means to you and to Quad, and how you're thinking about that concept.
I think the research is really a directive to brands to really go back and remap that customer journey. Like, what does omnichannel really mean to you? And I think what's so interesting about this research is consumers are telling us that they're in control of their omnichannel experience. They're actually seeking out these experiences. I think with the proliferation of digital over the last 2 decades, I think we've leaned so heavily into that, and it's just been very easy to target consumers, like 24/7, all the time, as soon as they open their phone. And I think what they're telling us is like, that's too much for me. I actually want less time with this device, not in a bad way. And I'm asking brands to surprise me through the mail. I'm asking for better retail experiences. I'm asking for a blend of physical and digital, right? This isn't an either or, it's an and. And so I think for brands, that missing link essentially is perhaps you sort of ignoring what your customer wants. I think we've seen, amongst our own clients, kind of that return maybe to physical media, or testing some solutions, or trying to figure out like what's happening at the household level, where I can really make sure that I'm giving them the right thing. So I think the missing link is really how brands define it, but I think it's also what the consumer is telling us, is that it's not as complete. And for brands who make it complete for me, I will happily stay connected and loyal to you. So I think it's really a good directive and something to listen to from a consumer behavior standpoint.
An excellent note to end on. The full report, the research we were citing, it's called The Return of Touch, is the report, and the link is in the show notes if you want to get that for free. That's all we have time for today's episode. Thank you so much to my guests for hanging out with me today. Thank you first to Heidi.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me. It's a ton of fun.
Yes,
and I
indeed.
love milk chocolate day. I love it. I'm going to go eat
long
some
as it's
English
English.
Cadbury's. Yes. 100%.
Yes, she's back. I knew you'd come around. Jeremy, thank you to you, sir.
As always, this is a high-touch experience.
We try. Thanks to the whole editing crew and to everyone for listening into Behind the Numbers New Marketer video podcast made possible by Quad. Subscribe if you would like. Follow us if the mood takes you, and leave a rating and review if you can. Tune in Wednesday to hear our unofficial top 8 most interesting retailers of the month list for July on our Reimagining Retail show.